Hello everyone, and welcome once again to I've Been Playing. It's been quite a while since I've done one of these. I honestly can't even remember the last one I did, but we're back, and today we're talking about Silent Hill F. And since this is a relatively recent game, and given the nature of the game, I am going to say that all the footage you'll see is only from the first hour or so of the game. It's from the hour I recorded for my second channel of 1 hour recordings, so you can check that out if you want to see more or anything like that. Please go check that channel out, but also you don't have to worry about major spoilers. Maybe some stuff, but in the footage there shouldn't be anything major, and I'm gonna do my best to not spoil anything either as I talk about it. Potentially smaller things, but I don't think so. We'll see. I do tend to just ramble in these. I don't have a script or anything, so we'll see how it goes. In any case, Silent Hill F is, of course, the most recent Silent Hill that just released last week, I think exactly a week ago, as of when I'm recording this. And before it even launched, people had some issue with it, because it's set in Japan, and just other things, and they were like, oh, it's not Silent Hill, blah 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 blah. God forbid we stray from convention even a little bit, because we just want the same thing over and over again. Which, to some extent, I do understand, but also, series are allowed to evolve, but that's a different discussion. But at a very basic level, the introduction to this story is you are playing as a young girl, Hinako, who is in her hometown of Ebisugaoka, which is a hell of a mouthful of a name to include. They went full in on the Japanese there. Understandably. But yeah, that's a mouthful of a name. But she's there and she meets up with some of her friends, and then very quickly things go south because the fog rolls in and mysterious plants start taking over everything and chasing them, and monsters appear, all your typical Silent Hill stuff, minus the air raid siren. Which is why I argue that, I mean, this is very clearly a Silent Hill game. It takes place in a small town in the hills that's full of fog, full of monsters. There's obviously some sort of local religion / cult that's going on. That's Silent Hill. Like, if you didn't know I was talking about this game, would you know that it wasn't Silent Hill 1? Probably not. So, the very basic setup of a Silent Hill game is there, and I would argue that there are other Silent Hill games that do Silent Hill worse. And it's not even the only Silent Hill game that doesn't really take place in Silent Hill. Silent Hill 4 exists, so there's really no argument there. It is a Silent Hill game. But anyway, that's the basic setup for the story. I think if I elaborate too much on the story from there, it starts to get into spoiler territory. Obviously, again, since it's a Silent Hill game, it's kind of the psychological thing. There's obviously something going on in Hinako's subconscious, or something. There's something she's dealing with, there's some trauma there. I suppose one of the earliest traumas that kind of comes up is the potential for, like, just a bad family life, potentially abuse, stuff like that. So, also, trigger warning, but the game tells you that, and it is Silent Hill. It deals with psychological stuff and a lot of dark subject matter, so I would assume if you're watching this you know and are prepared, but just in case. There's also kind of the otherworldly stuff. There's a version of kind of the otherworld, I guess, but it's less, how do I put this? It's less that the town around you is changing, although that's true, but there's like the second realm that you get transported to. Maybe that part is not entirely clear what's happening there. The way it's presented makes it seem like it's fully like a dream or something like that, but it very clearly isn't. That's not really how Silent Hill operates. It's just how they've chosen to interpret or display, I guess, the other world in this one. So you go through a chunk in what is ostensibly the real world, who knows, and then you go to this shrine area with kind of other characters, other meanings. You learn more about the friends' relationships to each other and how they may or may not be healthy. There's also something else that ties very much into what's obviously going on in Hinako's life that she's working through and stuff like that. And by the end, you kind of get a clear picture of what's going on. But one thing I know that will probably annoy people with this is that it's one of those games like Nier Automata, where you have to play it multiple times. Not multiple perspectives, because you're always playing as Hinako, but you kind of have to play it multiple times to get the full story, because you get to the end of the first playthrough. Everyone gets the same ending on the first playthrough. I don't think there's any way you could cheat your way out of that. I mean, you'd have to spoil something for yourself, and even then I don't know if the game will let you do that. So, the first ending you get is always the same. And I would say that it does a pretty good job of like giving the basics. I don't think, unless you've paid no attention to the symbolism or the story at all, I don't think it's going to be too ambiguous. There are certainly going to be unanswered questions that will come up in other playthroughs and become more clear if you do more playthroughs. But I think the basic idea is certainly there. I think if you're only planning on playing it once and you're the type of person who wants everything spoon-fed to you and explained, you're not going to be happy with it. And I haven't played through all the endings yet, so I don't know if the final ending of the final playthrough is going to be fully satisfactory either. But I think a lot of what you will take away from this game, if you want to play it or if you do play it, is whether you, number one, are willing to play through it multiple times, and number two, don't mind not knowing everything. Because I feel like other Silent Hill games, by the end of it, it's a little weird, but you more or less get the whole story. This is not one of those. In terms of endings, there are 5. There's the one everyone gets when they finish the game the first time. There's, of course, a UFO ending, and there are 3 others. I have finished the first playthrough and the UFO ending. And the second ending, a nice thing is that when you finish the game once, there's an option on the menu to view endings, so you can kind of see how to get them at least. And I've played through the second one kind of on that list. I don't know if you have to play them in order, but I am. So I finished that one, and it does add a little more context. Some things, some cutscenes and stuff, some dialogue is definitely changed throughout. The ending of the game is different, again, adds a little more context. And oh my goodness, the boss. Okay, so a lot of people were arguing that the combat in this, we'll get into it in a second, makes it a Souls-like. First of all, just because a game has combat where you can dodge does not mean it's a Souls-like, okay? It's not a Souls-like, partly because the combat's not that good, but we'll get into that. But some of the bosses, especially the boss at the end of, honestly, both of them, but especially the second ending, that's a Soulsborne boss. That I can see. Which is kind of annoying, because now that we're here, we're gonna get into the combat, and the combat does not support bosses like this, because the combat is frustrating, and that's putting it mildly. Now, obviously, combat has never really been the highlight of the Silent Hill games. It's not really the point. It's typically made to be kind of clunky, because the protagonists of the Silent Hill games are not fighters. They're just normal people most of the time. So, part of that is just, it's not the focus of the game, and part of it is intentional, and I realize that, and I'm sure it's the case here as well. She's a high school girl. She's not gonna be able to beat things to death efficiently, probably. Like, she probably doesn't have sword skills or beating with a lead pipe skills. Like, that's not really something you learn when you're 16, typically. So, from that standpoint, I get it. It's serviceable. It did take me a little while to get used to it, but once I understood specifically the focus mechanic, it's really important to do, and I wasn't using it at first, so I was struggling a bit more than I probably should have, but once you get used to it, it's fine if you choose to engage in the combat, which obviously you don't always have to do. Until you do, because the game decides that you want to fight everything. Because, oh my goodness, the last third of this game, so I've said I've completed multiple playthroughs. I don't know how long the second one took, but the first one took me just under 9 hours. But the combat, okay, so when you can run away from combat, the combat's fine, because you don't have to engage in the combat mechanics. The problem with this is that Silent Hill always has bosses, so the bosses themselves, like, existing doesn't bother me. What bothers me is that the last hour and a half, maybe even 2 hours of the game, you are thrown into a gauntlet of combat encounters, one after the other. You are forced to participate in it. You are forced to deal with it. And then you have like 2 bosses in the middle of this. So you'll have like a gauntlet of combat encounters, a boss, and then you'll go a little bit, and then there will be another gauntlet of combat encounters that you can't get out of, and then a boss. And it just, the end of the game brought the entire experience down for me to the point where, like, it's actively pissed me off both times I've played through the game. Because the first section is fine and easy enough, and especially you can upgrade yourself. You can upgrade health, stamina, sanity, which is a mechanic that you use that to focus to make fighting easier, in addition to having it deplete with psychological attacks from the enemies, and Omamori slots, so that's like special upgrades, special charms you get to upgrade certain things. You can upgrade all that stuff. So the second run through is easier, and I was having a better time with it. It was certainly more easy in general to fight things, also just playing the game more. There are certain things that you carry over from the first playthrough that you have earlier than you do originally. Not getting into what, but you know what I mean if you played it. You get something at some point that is extremely traumatic to watch, but it shows up earlier in your second playthrough. So it is overall easier just because you have access to more things. You also have access to special weapons, potentially, kind of depending on how you play the game. But even so, the last section of the game where you're just fighting and fighting and fighting and fighting and fighting, it really makes me kind of hate the game. And I want to see all the endings because I want the full story, but I am halfway through the third ending only because the second and third ending are similar enough. You can get like halfway through the game and then save it and then reload to do something differently. So at least you don't have to play the whole thing. But it's at the point where I really want the story, but thinking of having to go through that combat again and then again, I'm really... In addition to the fact that I've gotten back into trophy and achievement hunting recently, which hopefully you'll see on the channel relatively soon, something more about that. But I think I've missed collectibles. And I don't know if I can get the collectibles on my fourth playthrough. I think I should be able to, but if not, I'm gonna have to play the game again, at least 2 times, I think. And I do not want to do that. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. We'll see how I do. I will probably play through all the endings at least once just so I get the full story, but if I don't get all of the stuff, it's gonna be put down for a while because I have other things I want to play as well. And another thing that makes the combat really annoying is that there's one enemy that originally it just seems like it's a mini-boss. And fine, it's a little annoying as a mini-boss or a boss. I would consider it more a mini-boss, personally. And when it shows up as a mini-boss, it's fine. But then it becomes a recurring enemy. And it's one of those enemies that spawns other enemies. Again, if you've played the game, you know what I'm talking about, which one I'm talking about, but it shows up over and over again. It's a pain in the ass to fight. It spawns other enemies. The combat is not good enough for multiple enemies. It's just not. 1 enemy, fine. 2, manageable. 3's pushing it. Anything more than 3 is a pain in the ass, and then you have this monster that spawns other monsters. I understand and appreciate the symbolism of this monster. I understand in the context of the game. I understand what it's going for. I can understand it just as well when I fight it once as a mini-boss as when I get pissed off because it's in the gauntlet at the end of the game multiple times, and I have to kill multiple of them. In fact, I'd probably appreciate it more if I didn't have to see it every 5 seconds. Anyway, can you tell the combat is easily the worst part of this game. It brings it down so much, especially towards the end. I think it's just not necessary. I don't really see the point, like, in the gauntlet at the end. I don't understand why it needs to be there. Like, there are bosses, and the bosses make sense. The bosses make sense. The lead up to the bosses, where I have to fight a bunch of the other monsters that I've already fought a million times in these tiny, narrow corridors, like, it's not necessary. It isn't necessary. I don't know why, especially with weapon durability. Why are you making me go through all this before a boss fight with weapon durability where why? I don't know what they thought they were doing with the end of the game, or why they thought that was a good choice, but, like, even just 1 gauntlet of enemies before the final boss would be better than 3 or 4 of them. Why are there so many combat encounters at the end? Anyway, I think that's probably enough ranting about it. I figure you probably know whether you want to pick this one up or not. You potentially already have picked this one up if you wanted to. I think the story is probably worth it. It depends on how you feel about ambiguous endings. It depends on how much you feel like replaying the game multiple times to see the full story. Again, it's like Nier Automata. Personally, I didn't play through that one several times because I didn't enjoy it enough because I'm the only person in the world who doesn't like it that much. But if you're willing to play through it multiple times, you'll get more of the story. But if you're only planning on playing it once, yeah, it depends on how okay you are with not having a full story. I would say the story is well told. It's more whether you'll like the conclusion, I guess. My one massive gripe is the combat. Like, I don't think I had anything else. It looks really pretty. It ran mostly well. There are a few points, especially, again, towards the end when there were so many enemies on screen, it did start losing frames a bit, which was really fun. Sometimes the camera just is at a terrible angle, especially, again, towards the end bit where you're in cramped corridors fighting things. But I think if you enjoy horror games, it's scary the first time. The second time wasn't so much because I knew what to expect. I think if you are a horror game fan, you'll probably mostly enjoy this. Maybe you'll like the combat more than I did. I don't know. I don't think it's very good. obviously. In terms of Silent Hill, it depends on how strict you are about what constitutes a Silent Hill game. Personally, I think it's a Silent Hill game, because it's psychological. Again, all of the basics are there, the basic setup of the story and stuff. The drip-fed psychological themes are there. The monster symbolism is on point. The monster design is great. So I suppose it just depends on how much of a Silent Hill purist you are. Again, at this point, I know Silent Hill is a place, but at this point, Silent Hill is not just a place. It's kind of a concept. It's kind of an entity, I guess, of its own. And again, it's not like all Silent Hill games take place in Silent Hill. And also, I mean, it's been how many years since a Silent Hill game came out? I know the Silent Hill 2 remake, but that was a remake. It wasn't a fresh new story. As I said at the beginning, franchises are allowed to reinvent themselves and decide what they want, and given that a lot of the Silent Hill stuff that came out whenever the last games came out was bad, and then the horrible well, it wasn't live action, it was like live reaction? Whatever the hell that thing was. Like, they kind of needed a break with Silent Hill, and I think this is good enough, and with Silent Hill 2 Remake as well. I think Silent Hill is, like, doing okay as an IP now. I don't know. I would at least give it a try. I don't know if it's worth full price if you're not, certainly if you're not going to play it multiple times, it probably isn't. As with everything, your mileage may vary. I would say if you want to get into it without spoilers, maybe buy it now, but things are expensive, living is expensive. If you don't want to buy it at full price, I get it. Especially since, like I said, the first playthrough, and potentially only playthrough if you're not interested in playing through it multiple times, took me less than 9 hours, just under 9 hours. 9 hours, $70, doesn't really seem worth it. I think it's worth playing though, so use that as you will. Okay, anyway, I think I've been rambling on long enough. It's like I haven't recorded anything in so long that I just need to talk, so I'm gonna stop now. If you've played this, or if you're going to play this, or whatever thoughts you have about Silent Hill F, please put them down in the comments down below. As I said, it's been out a week already, so I'm sure there are some people who have tried it, or played all the endings, if you're more, like, into that than I am. I was really trying, because I was playing this almost exclusively, and I can't get myself motivated to continue on the next playthrough because the combat is so annoying. Like, I don't know if you can understand without playing it, without playing the end section of the game, how annoying this combat is. Just not really selling the game, I realize, but genuinely the rest of the game is worth it. It's just the combat, specifically towards the end, that I think drags it down from being a great experience to just like a decent experience, you know? Anyway, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. Hopefully I will get more videos out on the channel soon. I know I keep saying that, but it's October now, and I like October, and I have plenty of horror games that we can potentially play. And like I said, I hopefully will have a new sort of video out relatively soon. I have ideas. I've had ideas all year. I just haven't gotten around to it because I don't know where my motivation has gone this year. It's just not there. So I'll see you when I see you. Bye.